When my daughter-in-law texted me from the airport, "Father-in-law, watch the house while we're away, remember to clean every day," I stared at those words for exactly 10 seconds. Then I typed back one word: okay. What she didn't know was that in those 10 seconds, I had made a decision that would change everything. I walked straight to my bedroom, packed my suitcase, locked the door behind me, and disappeared. When they came back from their all-inclusive luxury vacation a week later and opened that front door, what they saw stopped them cold. Because the house wasn't just empty, it was a message. And I was already 2,000 miles away, sitting on a beach I'd dreamed about for 30 years, finally living the life they thought I didn't deserve. Before I tell you exactly what I left behind for them to find, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button. Because what this family did to exclude me will make your blood boil, but what I did in return will make you stand up and cheer. My name is Harold Mitchell. I'm 72 years old, and I've been a widower for 8 years now. My wife Margaret died of cancer when she was only 64, and since then, I've been living in the small guest house behind my son David's property. It seemed like the perfect arrangement when he first suggested it. I could help with the grandkids, be close to family, and not be alone in my grief. What I didn't realize was that I wasn't joining a family. I was becoming their live-in servant. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how it really started. David is my only son. We were close when he was growing up, or at least I thought we were. After Margaret died, he and his wife Vanessa invited me to move into their guest house. "Dad, we want you close," David said, putting his hand on my shoulder at the funeral. "The kids need their grandfather. We need you." Those words meant everything to me in that moment. I was drowning in grief, facing an empty house full of memories, and my son was throwing me a lifeline. I sold my home of 35 years and moved into that 400-square-foot guest house within 2 months. At first, it felt like family. Vanessa would knock on my door in the mornings, asking if I wanted coffee. The kids, Emma, 12, and Tyler, 9, would run over after school to show me their homework. David and I would work on projects together in the garage on weekends, just like when he was a boy. I felt useful again. I felt needed. I felt like maybe I could survive losing Margaret after all. But slowly, so slowly I didn't notice it happening, things started to change. The requests became more frequent, more demanding, less like favors and more like obligations. "Dad, can you watch the kids tonight? We have dinner plans." "Harold, the lawn needs mowing. Could you handle that?" "Father-in-law, I left groceries on your porch. Could you put them away and start dinner? We'll be home late." It happened so gradually that I didn't see the pattern forming. One favor became two. Two became daily expectations. And daily expectations became my entire existence. Within a year of moving in, I was mowing their lawn every week, watching the kids 3 afternoons a week, cooking dinner 4 nights a week, and doing their grocery shopping every Saturday. And I never saw a penny for any of it. But I told myself it was fine. This is what families do, right? They help each other. The kids needed me, and I needed to feel useful. Margaret would have wanted me to be there for them, so I kept saying yes. I kept showing up. I kept sacrificing my time, my energy, my own life, because they were my family, and that's what you do for family. Or at least, that's what I kept telling myself every time I felt that small voice in the back of my head asking, "When do they ever help you?" The truth I didn't want to face was that the help only went one direction. When I had a doctor's appointment, I drove myself. When I was sick with the flu last winter, I ate canned soup alone in my guest house while they went out to a restaurant 50 feet away. When my car broke down, David told me he was too busy to look at it, so I paid $800 to a mechanic. But when their dishwasher broke, I was expected to be there immediately to let the repairman in because Vanessa had a hair appointment she couldn't miss. The double standard was so obvious, but I was so desperate to maintain what I thought was family connection that I ignored it. Then came Vanessa's big win. She works in pharmaceutical sales, and apparently she'd had an incredible year. Her company rewarded her with an all-expenses-paid trip to Hawaii, a full week at a luxury resort in Maui. Flights, hotel, meals, activities, everything included. She came home that Tuesday evening practically glowing with excitement. I was in their kitchen making spaghetti. They'd asked me to cook dinner because Vanessa had a big meeting, when she burst through the door waving her phone. "I won! I won the incentive trip! We're going to Hawaii!" she shrieked, and David rushed in from the garage to hear the news. I stood there at the stove stirring sauce, watching them celebrate. The kids came running down the stairs, and Vanessa told them they were going to Hawaii, that they'd swim in the ocean and see volcanoes and stay in a fancy hotel with pools and everything. Emma and Tyler started jumping up and down, screaming with joy. David hugged Vanessa, both of them laughing, and I kept stirring the sauce, waiting for someone to look at me, to include me in this moment, to say something, anything, that acknowledged I was even in the room. But nobody did. I was invisible. Just the cook. Just the help. After dinner, which I served, cleaned up, and did all the dishes for, I went back to my guest house. I sat in my worn recliner, the same one Margaret and I had bought 20 years ago, and I stared at the wall. Something was bothering me. Something beyond just being ignored during their celebration. It was the way Vanessa had said, "We're going to Hawaii." The way she'd told the kids, "You're going to swim in the ocean." The way David had immediately started looking at his phone, probably checking his calendar to make sure he could take the week off work. The way absolutely nobody had looked at me or mentioned my name even once during that entire celebration. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying the scene in my mind, listening for any moment where someone had said, "And Grandpa too," or "We'll all go together," or even just, "Isn't this exciting, Dad?" But there was nothing. Just the sound of my own heartbeat and the clock ticking on the wall and the slowly growing realization that I wasn't included. Not in the celebration, and probably not in the trip either. By morning, I knew what was coming, but I didn't want to believe it. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted to think that surely my own son wouldn't exclude his widowed father from a free family vacation. That afternoon, Vanessa knocked on my door. She had printouts in her hand, flight information, hotel details, activity schedules. "I wanted to show you our itinerary," she said, with that bright smile she uses when she wants something. She spread the papers across my small kitchen table, showing me everything they'd be doing. Snorkeling, luau's, helicopter tours, sunset dinner cruises, 7 days and 6 nights in paradise. And as she talked, pointing at pictures of the resort, I waited for the moment she'd explain when my flight was, or where I'd be sleeping. That moment never came. She talked for 20 minutes about their vacation, and not once did she use the word "we" in a way that included me. "When do you leave?" I finally asked, my voice flat. "Next Saturday. Can you believe it? Just 5 days away." She was practically bouncing with excitement. I took a breath. "And where will I be staying at the resort?" The question hung in the air between us. Vanessa's smile didn't fade, but something changed in her eyes. A hardness I'd seen before but always pretended not to notice. "Oh, Harold," she said, using that condescending tone people use when explaining something obvious to someone stupid. "The prize only includes 4 people. It's for the immediate family." Immediate family. As if I was some distant cousin. Not the grandfather of her children. Not the father of her husband. "I see?" I said, and I did see. I saw everything clearly for the first time in years. "So what will I do while you're gone?" Vanessa picked up her papers, organizing them with crisp efficiency. "Well, obviously someone needs to watch the house. We can't just leave it empty for a whole week. You know how break-ins happen in this neighborhood." I stared at her. "You want me to house sit?" "Well, yes. And the plants need watering. The mail needs to be brought in. The floors should be swept daily. You know how dust accumulates. Oh, and the pool needs to be cleaned mid-week. David can show you how to use the vacuum." I sat there in my small kitchen, in my guest house, on their property, looking at this woman who had just told me I wasn't immediate family while simultaneously asking me to work for free for a week while they vacationed in paradise. "What about the kids?" I asked. "Don't they want their grandpa to come?" Vanessa's smile tightened. "Harold, they're so excited for this family trip. Just the 4 of us. You understand, right? They need this time with their parents. Quality family time." The irony was so thick I could have cut it with a knife. I provided childcare 3 days a week, but I wasn't family enough for Hawaii. I cooked their meals and mowed their lawn, but I wasn't immediate enough to be included. I wanted to explode. I wanted to tell her exactly what I thought of her immediate family designation. I wanted to ask David how he could let his father be excluded like this, but I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I nodded slowly. I understand, I said. And I did understand. I understood that I had been a fool for 2 years. I understood that I wasn't a beloved family member. I was free labor. I understood that my son had learned to see me the same way his wife did, as someone useful but not important, someone to use but not to value. Vanessa left my guest house that day with her itinerary papers and her satisfied smile, believing that everything was settled. The next few days were strange. I went through my usual routine, watching the kids after school, making dinner twice, mowing the lawn on Thursday, but something had shifted inside me. Every time I did something for them, I felt it differently. This wasn't love or family obligation anymore. This was servitude, and I had enabled it. I had accepted it. I had participated in my own diminishment because I was terrified of being alone, terrified of admitting that my son didn't really want me around. He just wanted what I could do for him. Margaret would have been heartbroken to see what had become of our family, or maybe she would have seen it long before I did. Friday night, they had a family dinner to celebrate before the trip. I wasn't invited to that either, though I could hear them laughing through my window. At one point, Tyler ran over to my guest house to ask if I had any ketchup because they'd run out. I gave him the bottle and watched him run back to the main house, back to the family dinner that didn't include me. That was my role now. The ketchup supplier, the lawnmower, the house sitter. Not the grandfather, not the father. Just the help who lived in the back. And something in me finally, permanently broke. Not with anger yet, but with a cold, clear certainty. This couldn't continue. I couldn't continue. Something had to change. Saturday morning arrived sunny and perfect. Ideal weather for traveling to Hawaii. I woke up at 5 a.m., not because I had to, but because I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to the sounds of the main house coming to life. Suitcases being dragged downstairs, car doors opening and closing, excited voices. I got up, made myself coffee, and sat at my kitchen window watching them load the car. David carried luggage. Vanessa double-checked tickets on her phone. Emma and Tyler bounced around wearing flower leis, already pretending they were in Hawaii. Nobody looked toward my window. Nobody knocked to say goodbye. I was already forgotten, already just the caretaker of their property. At 6:30, my phone buzzed, a text from Vanessa. I picked it up and read, "Father-in-law, watch the house while we're away. Remember to clean every day. The pool needs vacuuming on Wednesday. Mail goes on the kitchen counter. We'll be back next Saturday evening. Thanks." No, please. No, we appreciate you. Just instructions delivered like I was the hired help. And then, as I watched, they all got in the car, David driving, Vanessa in the passenger seat, kids in the back, and they pulled out of the driveway. They drove right past my guest house without slowing down, without waving, without a single backward glance. And they were gone. Off to paradise while I stayed behind to sweep their floors. I looked down at my phone, at that text with its casual commands and complete lack of gratitude or warmth. I thought about what the next week would look like if I followed their expectations. Me alone in their empty house, watering their plants, cleaning their pool, making sure everything was perfect for their return. Me putting my life on hold to maintain theirs. Me continuing to accept this dynamic where I gave everything and received nothing but more demands. And in that moment, staring at those words, "Watch the house while we're away," something shifted. It wasn't rage yet. It was something colder and clearer than rage. It was decision. I typed back one word. Okay. Then I set my phone down on the counter and walked to my bedroom. I pulled my old suitcase out from under the bed, the one Margaret and I had used for our trips before she got sick. I opened it up on the bed and started packing. Clothes, toiletries, medications, my favorite books. The photo of Margaret from our 25th anniversary. I packed methodically, calmly, like I was preparing for any normal trip, because that's exactly what I was doing. I was preparing for a trip. My trip. The one I'd been putting off for 8 years because I thought I needed to be here, available, useful to a family that had made it crystal clear I wasn't really part of theirs. What I did next, none of them saw coming. And when they opened that front door a week later, what was waiting for them would change everything forever. By 7 a.m., my suitcase was packed and sitting by the front door of my guest house. I looked around at the small space I'd called home for 2 years. The recliner where I'd spent countless evenings alone. The kitchenette where I'd eaten thousands of solitary meals. The bedroom where I'd cried myself to sleep more times than I wanted to admit. This place had never really been a home. It had been a cell. A comfortable cell, maybe, but still a prison where I'd locked myself away, convinced that proximity to family was the same thing as being loved by them. I picked up my suitcase, walked out, and locked the door behind me. I didn't look back. I walked across the yard to the main house. I had keys, of course. They'd given them to me so I could let myself in to cook, clean, and take care of things when they were out. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The house smelled like Vanessa's expensive perfume and the breakfast they'd rushed through before leaving. Dishes were still in the sink. I could see where Tyler had spilled orange juice on the counter, and nobody had bothered to wipe it up because they knew I would do it. That's what I always did. I cleaned up their messes, literally and figuratively. But not anymore. I walked through each room slowly, deliberately, seeing it all with new eyes. The living room with furniture I'd helped David move in. The kitchen where I'd cooked hundreds of meals. The kids' rooms where I'd read bedtime stories when they were younger, back when they still seemed to care that I existed. The master bedroom where David and Vanessa slept, probably never once discussing how they were using me. Every room was a monument to my own foolishness, to the years I'd wasted believing I was building something when really I was just being used. I went to the kitchen and found a notepad, the one Vanessa used for her grocery lists. I sat down at their dining table, the same table where they'd celebrated their Hawaii trip without including me, and I started writing. My hand was steady. My mind was clear. I wrote for 20 minutes, explaining exactly what I thought of their immediate family designation, their casual exploitation, their complete lack of gratitude or respect. I didn't hold back. Every resentment I'd swallowed for 2 years came out in that letter. When I finished, I read it over once, folded it, and placed it in an envelope. On the front I wrote David in large letters, but a letter wasn't enough. Words on paper wouldn't make them understand what they'd done. They needed something more visceral, more immediate, something that would hit them the moment they walked through that door. I looked around the kitchen, and that's when the idea came to me. It was perfect. It was proportional. It was exactly what they deserved. I opened the refrigerator and started removing everything. Milk, eggs, cheese, vegetables, leftovers, condiments, everything. I carried it all to the garage and loaded it into garbage bags. Every single item. Then I did the same with the freezer. The steaks they'd been saving. The ice cream the kids loved. The fancy frozen meals Vanessa bought. All of it went into bags. I wasn't stealing their food. I was removing my labor. Because every single item in that refrigerator represented something I had done for them. I'd bought the groceries. I'd organized the refrigerator. I'd meal planned and cooked and cleaned. They'd never once thanked me for any of it. They just expected it. Like it was my job. Well, if I wasn't family enough to go to Hawaii, then I wasn't family enough to keep managing their household. Let them figure out how to feed themselves when they got back. Let them experience what it felt like to come home to an empty refrigerator after I'd been doing it for them for 2 years. Next, I went to the laundry room. There were piles of clothes waiting to be washed. I could see David's work shirts and Vanessa's expensive workout gear and the kids' school uniforms. Normally, I would have started a load before they even got home, making sure everything was clean and ready for their return. Instead, I took every piece of dirty laundry, stuffed it all into trash bags, and carried those to the garage too. Then I emptied the clean laundry basket, the one I'd folded 3 days ago, and added those clothes to the bags as well. If they wanted clean clothes, they could wash them themselves. I moved through the house methodically. I took all the toilet paper from the bathrooms and packed it in my car. I took all the paper towels from the kitchen. I unplugged their coffee maker and took that too. A coffee maker I'd bought with my own money last Christmas because theirs had broken, and I knew they'd expect me to replace it. I took the good towels from the linen closet, the ones Margaret and I had received as wedding gifts 40 years ago, and that I'd brought to the guest house, but that had somehow migrated to the main house bathrooms. I took the throw blankets from the couch, the ones I'd crocheted during the lonely evenings when they were out having family time without me. I went to the garage and found the lawnmower, the one I'd used every single week for 2 years, in the heat of summer and the rain of spring, keeping their property looking perfect while my own guest house yard was neglected. I loaded it into my truck. If they wanted their lawn mowed, they could buy their own equipment and do it themselves. I took the gardening tools too, the ones that had been my father's, and that I'd been using to maintain Vanessa's elaborate flower beds. Those were mine. They were coming with me. Everything I'd contributed to this household over 2 years, I was taking back. You're probably wondering if I felt guilty. I didn't. Not even a little bit. Looking back now, I only wish I'd done it sooner. But what I did next, that's what really sent the message. I went back into the house and sat down at the kitchen table one more time. The empty refrigerator door hung open, showing bare shelves. The house felt different already, less like a home and more like the hollow shell it really was. A house isn't made by furniture and appliances. It's made by love and respect and mutual care. This house had never had those things, at least not for me. I'd been pouring love into a broken vessel for 2 years, and I was finally done. I pulled out my phone and made a call I'd been thinking about for months, but never had the courage to make. Jerry? It's Harold. Harold Mitchell. Yeah, it's been a long time. Listen, do you still have that beach condo in Myrtle Beach available for rent? Jerry Morrison had been my best friend before Margaret died. We'd lost touch after I moved into the guest house, partly because I was always too busy doing things for David's family, and partly because I was ashamed to admit how my life had become. Jerry had retired to South Carolina 3 years ago and bought a condo right on the beach. He'd invited me to visit a dozen times. I'd never gone. You're serious? You want to come down? Harold, I've been asking you for years. His voice was excited, genuinely happy to hear from me. It had been so long since someone sounded that way when I called. I'm serious. I can be there by tonight if I leave now. And Jerry, I might want to stay for a while. Maybe a week. Maybe longer. There was a pause on the other end. Harold, is everything okay? You sound different. I looked around at the stripped kitchen, at the empty refrigerator, at the letter on the table. Everything's fine, Jerry. Actually, everything's better than it's been in years. I just finally figured out what I need to do. He laughed. Well, it's about damn time. The condo's yours for as long as you want it. I'll leave the key under the mat. There's beer in the fridge and the fishing rods are in the closet. Welcome back to the land of the living, my friend. I hung up and sat there for a moment, feeling something I hadn't felt in 8 years. Hope. Actual, real hope for my own future. I wasn't just running away from something. I was running toward something. Toward the life I should have been living all along. Toward friendship and freedom and the ocean I'd loved since I was a boy. Toward myself. I stood up, took one last look at the kitchen, and walked out. I locked the front door behind me, got in my truck with all my belongings, and I drove away from that property without a single regret. The drive to Myrtle Beach took 11 hours. I stopped for lunch at a diner in North Carolina, and the waitress was kind to me in that genuine Southern way that made me realize how long it had been since someone had treated me with simple human warmth without wanting something in return. I tipped her $20 on a $12 meal. I stopped for gas in South Carolina and bought a postcard with a picture of the beach. I didn't write anything on it yet. I just wanted to hold something that represented where I was going instead of where I'd been. I arrived at Jerry's condo complex just as the sun was setting over the ocean. The sky was pink and orange and purple, and I could hear the waves crashing on the beach. I found the key under the mat exactly where Jerry said it would be, and I let myself into a space that smelled like salt air and possibility. The condo was small but beautiful, bright and clean with huge windows facing the ocean. I stood at those windows for a long time, watching the waves roll in, and I cried. Not from sadness this time, but from relief. I had escaped. I was free. For the first time in 8 years, I belonged to myself again. That night, I slept better than I had in years. I woke up to the sound of seagulls and sunlight streaming through the windows. I made coffee in Jerry's kitchen. He had one of those fancy machines that makes it exactly right, and I took my cup out onto the balcony. The ocean stretched out in front of me, endless and beautiful and indifferent to all my problems. It had been there long before I was born, and would be there long after I died. My problems with David and Vanessa were so small compared to that vastness. Why had I let them consume so much of my life? Jerry showed up around 10 o'clock with a bag of bagels and a smile as big as I remembered. "Harold! Look at you. You look like hell, but you look happy." We hugged, and it felt like coming home. We sat on the balcony eating bagels and drinking coffee, and I told him everything. The whole story from Margaret's death to the guest house to the Hawaii trip to my escape. Jerry listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he shook his head slowly. "I knew something was wrong, Harold. I knew it. Every time I called, you sounded more and more like a ghost. But I didn't know how to help you. I didn't know how to help myself," I admitted. "I thought I was doing the right thing. Being close to family. Being useful. Being needed." Jerry snorted. "Being needed and being used are two different things, my friend. You were being used." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the waves. Then Jerry said, "So what's your plan now?" I realized I didn't have one beyond getting away. "I don't know. Stay here for a while. Figure things out. Maybe I'll never go back." Jerry grinned. "That's the best plan I've heard from you in years." I won't lie to you. Those first few days in Myrtle Beach, I kept expecting my phone to ring. I kept waiting for the moment when David would discover what I'd done, and the fury would begin. But my phone stayed silent, and that silence told me everything I needed to know. The days developed a rhythm. Jerry and I would have breakfast on the balcony. We'd go for walks on the beach, our old legs protesting but our spirits soaring. We'd go fishing off the pier in the afternoons. We'd cook dinner together, simple meals of grilled fish and salads, nothing fancy. But everything tasted better because I was cooking for myself and a friend, not for people who couldn't even be bothered to say thank you. In the evenings, we'd sit on the balcony with beers and watch the sunset. We'd talk about Margaret, about Jerry's late wife Susan, about the lives we'd lived and the time we had left. On the third day, Jerry asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Have they called you yet?" I looked at my phone. No missed calls, no texts, no angry voicemails. Nothing. "No," I said. "They're still in Hawaii. They don't get back until Saturday evening." Jerry raised his eyebrows. "So they don't even know you're gone yet." The realization hit me fresh. For 3 days, I'd been living this new life, feeling free and happy, and they had no idea. They were on their family vacation, probably not thinking about me at all, assuming I was back at the house dutifully cleaning their floors and watering their plants like the good little servant I'd always been. "What do you think they'll do when they get home?" Jerry asked. I pictured it. David and Vanessa and the kids pulling into the driveway, tanned and relaxed from their paradise vacation. They'd unload their suitcases, walk up to the front door, unlock it, step inside. They'd see the letter first, probably. Then they'd notice the empty refrigerator. Then the missing laundry, the missing toiletries, the missing everything. They'd walk across the yard to the guest house and find it locked and empty. They'd realize I was gone. And then finally, they'd realize what they'd lost. "I think they'll be angry," I said. "Vanessa will be furious that the house isn't clean and the refrigerator is empty. David will be confused, maybe a little hurt, but mostly inconvenienced. The kids probably won't even notice I'm gone until they need something." Jerry was quiet for a moment. "Do you want them to call? Do you want to reconcile?" I thought about it honestly. Did I want my son back in my life? Of course. Did I want the relationship we'd had before? Absolutely not. "I want them to understand what they did," I finally said. "I want them to feel what I felt. And then, maybe, if they really understand and really change, we could try again. But it would have to be different. Completely different." Thursday came, and I went to a local real estate office. I'd been thinking about something Jerry had said, that I looked happy for the first time in years. I realized I didn't want to go back to that guest house even if David begged me. I wanted something of my own. Something by the ocean. Something that was mine, not borrowed, not dependent on someone else's generosity or tolerance. The real estate agent, a cheerful woman named Patricia, showed me listings. There was a small condo for sale in Jerry's building. 1 bedroom, ocean view, affordable on my retirement income. I'll take it, I said. Patricia blinked. Don't you want to see it first? Think about it? I smiled. I've been thinking about it for 8 years. I'll take it. Friday afternoon, I was sitting on the pier with Jerry, fishing lines in the water, when I finally turned my phone back on. I'd had it off for 2 days, enjoying the silence, the freedom from always being available for whatever crisis or demand might come through. The phone buzzed and buzzed and buzzed with notifications, text messages, voicemails, missed calls, all from the same timestamp, last night around 9:00 p.m. They were home. I looked at Jerry. They found the house. He set down his fishing rod. What did they say? I opened the texts first. The first one was from Vanessa. Harold, where are you? The house is a disaster. Call me immediately. The second was from David. Dad, we need to talk. Please call me as soon as you get this. Then another from Vanessa. This is completely unacceptable. We trusted you to take care of things and you abandoned your responsibilities. Call me back right now. Then David again. Dad, I'm worried. Are you okay? Where are you? Then Vanessa. If you don't call back in 1 hour, I'm calling the police to file a missing person report. I handed the phone to Jerry. He read through them and laughed, a harsh, bitter laugh. She's threatening to call the police because you didn't clean her house. That's rich. There were more texts from this morning. David. Dad, I know you're upset about the Hawaii trip. Let's talk about this. Where are you? Vanessa. Harold, you took items from our home without permission. That's theft. I strongly suggest you return everything immediately, and we can discuss this like adults. The entitlement in that message was staggering. I'd been taking care of their home for 2 years, and the one time I stopped, she accused me of theft. The voicemails were more of the same. David sounded worried and confused. Vanessa sounded angry and entitled. Neither of them sounded like they understood what they'd done wrong. Neither of them mentioned the letter I'd left. Maybe they hadn't read it. Maybe they had, and it didn't matter. I looked out at the ocean, at the waves rolling endlessly toward the shore, and I made a decision. I texted David back. I'm fine. I'm safe. I needed a break. I'll call you when I'm ready to talk. Then I turned the phone off again. They could wait. They could wonder. They could experience a fraction of what I'd felt for 2 years. The uncertainty, the being ignored, the not being valued enough to be included. Saturday morning, I woke up and made a decision. I called David. He answered on the first ring. Dad, thank God. Where are you? Are you okay? His voice was strained, worried. I felt a small pang of guilt. He was my son, after all, and I didn't want him to genuinely worry about my safety. But I also knew that sometimes love requires tough boundaries. I'm fine, David. I'm safe. I'm at the beach. There was a long pause. The beach? What beach? What are you talking about? Dad, you were supposed to watch the house. We came home to... Everything's a mess. The refrigerator is empty. Half our stuff is gone. What happened? What happened, I said calmly, is that I realized I'm not your employee. I'm your father, and fathers deserve to be treated like family, not like hired help. Another pause. I could hear Vanessa in the background, her voice sharp and demanding. What's he saying? Where is he? Did he take our things? David's voice was muffled as he spoke to her. Then he came back to the phone. Dad, Vanessa is really upset. She says you took things from the house. The lawnmower, the towels, some of the food. She's talking about calling the police. Those towels were my wedding gifts from 40 years ago, I said. The lawnmower I bought with my own money. The food I purchased. Tell Vanessa that if she wants to call the police and explain how she's been using her father-in-law as unpaid labor for 2 years, she's welcome to do that. I'd be happy to show them the receipts. I heard David take a breath. Dad, that's not fair. We never forced you to do anything. You offered to help. And there it was. the fundamental misunderstanding that had poisoned everything. "David, do you know why I offered to help?" I asked. "Because I wanted to be close to my family. I wanted to be part of your life. I wanted to matter to you. But somewhere along the way, you stopped seeing me as your father and started seeing me as free labor." "That's not true," David protested, but his voice lacked conviction. "Then why wasn't I invited to Hawaii?" I asked. "Why am I not immediate family? Why did your wife text me from the airport with a list of chores instead of saying goodbye? Why have you never once in 2 years asked me how I was doing? When was the last time you invited me to dinner that I didn't have to cook? When was the last time you helped me with anything?" Silence. Long, heavy silence. Finally, David said, "I didn't realize. I didn't think. That's the problem, son. You didn't think. You didn't notice. You took me for granted because I was always there, always available, always saying yes." I could hear Vanessa in the background again, her voice rising. "Is he coming back? We need to know if he's coming back. Who's going to watch the kids on Tuesday?" I closed my eyes. Even now, even in this moment of confrontation, her concern was about childcare. Not about me. Not about what they'd done or how they'd hurt me. Just about whether their free babysitter was coming back. "Dad," David said, and I heard something new in his voice. Something that might have been the beginning of understanding. "What do you want? What do you want us to do?" What I said next changed everything. Not just for them, but for me too. Because I realized I'd finally found my voice after 8 years of silence. "I want you to understand something, David. I'm not coming back to that guest house. I'm not coming back to mowing your lawn and cooking your dinners and watching your kids while you go out and live your life. I'm done being useful. I want to be valued. I want to be loved. I want to be treated like family, not like staff." David's voice was small. "You are family, Dad. Then treat me like it," I said. "Treat me like someone whose feelings matter, whose company you actually enjoy, who deserves to be included in family trips and family dinners and family decisions. Not someone you call when you need something." There was a long, painful silence. I could hear David breathing, processing. Then Vanessa's voice came through, sharp and clear. She'd taken the phone. "Harold, this is ridiculous. You're acting like a child. We treated you perfectly well and you're throwing a tantrum because of one vacation. Grow up." Something in me snapped. "No, Vanessa. I'm acting like an adult. I'm setting boundaries. I'm expecting basic respect. You treated me like an employee but refused to pay me. You used me for 2 years, and the one time I stopped being useful, you threatened to call the police. That's not family. That's exploitation." "How dare you?" she started, but I cut her off. "I dare because I finally realized I deserve better. Margaret would be ashamed of what I let you do to me. She'd be ashamed of what you became, David. And she'd be proud that I finally stood up for myself." I hung up before either of them could respond. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. But I felt more alive than I had in years. Jerry was standing in the doorway. He'd heard everything. He walked over and put his hand on my shoulder. "Your wife would be proud, Harold. I'm proud of you." That afternoon, my phone rang again. It was David, alone this time. "Dad, I read your letter. The one you left on the table. I should have read it Thursday night, but Vanessa threw it away. I found it in the trash this morning." I waited. "You're right. About everything. I didn't see it happening. Or maybe I did and I chose not to. It was just so easy. You were always there, always helping, always available. I started to expect it instead of appreciating it. And Vanessa, He paused. "She's very demanding. She has high expectations of everyone. I should have stood up for you. I should have insisted you come to Hawaii. I should have noticed you were eating dinner alone every night while we had family time without you." "Yes," I said simply. "You should have." "Can you forgive me?" David asked, and I heard tears in his voice. "Can we fix this?" I looked out at the ocean. I thought about Margaret and what she would want. I thought about Emma and Tyler, who I did love despite everything. I thought about the father-son relationship David and I used to have, back before his marriage, back before I became useful instead of loved. "Maybe," I said finally. But it can't go back to how it was. I'm not moving back into the guest house. I'm buying a condo here in Myrtle Beach. I'm starting over. If you want me in your life, you're going to have to treat me like I matter, not like I'm convenient. Okay, David said quickly. Okay, yes, whatever you need. We'll do better. I'll do better. I wanted to believe him. Part of me did believe him, but I also knew that real change takes time and proof. We'll see, I said. For now, I need space. I need time to build my own life. The life I should have been living all along. We talked for a few more minutes, and when we hung up, I felt something settling inside me. Not forgiveness yet, not reconciliation, but maybe the possibility of it. Maybe. The week stretched into 2 weeks, then 3. I bought the condo in Jerry's building. I furnished it with things I chose, things I liked. Not hand-me-downs or practical pieces, but beautiful things that made me happy. I went fishing every day. I made new friends at the pier. I started going to a book club at the local library. I was building a life that was mine, and it was the best thing I'd done in 8 years. David called once a week, always respectful, always asking about my life before mentioning anything about theirs. It was different. It was better, but I still wasn't ready to go back. Then one Saturday morning, 6 weeks after I'd left, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find David standing there, alone. No Vanessa, no kids. Just my son, looking older and more tired than I remembered. "Hi, Dad," he said. "I hope it's okay that I came. I needed to talk to you in person." I stood there for a moment, surprised, then stepped aside. "Come in." He walked into my small condo and looked around. He saw the ocean view, the comfortable furniture, the photos of Margaret I'd hung on the walls. "It's nice here," he said. "It's really nice. You look happy." "I am happy," I said, for the first time in a long time. We sat on the balcony, and for a few minutes, neither of us spoke. We just watched the waves roll in. Finally, David said, "I came to apologize. Really apologize, not just say the words. I've been thinking about everything you said, everything you wrote in that letter, and you were right about all of it. We used you. I used you. I let Vanessa treat you like hired help, and I never stood up for you because it was easier not to, because I benefited from it too." I listened without interrupting. This was what I'd been waiting for. Not just acknowledgement, but understanding. "The kids have been asking about you," David continued. "Emma especially. She asked why Grandpa doesn't come over anymore, and I had to tell her the truth, that we treated you badly and you left. She cried. She said she misses you reading to her and helping with her homework. And Tyler, he said something that really hit me. He said, 'Did Grandpa stop loving us?' And I had to explain that no, you still love them, but you had to love yourself first." "That's exactly right," I said quietly. "I do love them, David. I love you. But I can't pour all my love into people who don't love me back the same way. I can't be the only one who sacrifices, the only one who gives, the only one who shows up. Love has to go both ways." David nodded, wiping his eyes. "I know. And I want to show you that I understand that now. Not with words, but with actions. I want to rebuild our relationship, but the right way this time. As father and son, not as employer and employee." "What about Vanessa?" I asked. "How does she feel about all this?" David took a deep breath. "Honestly, she's still angry. She thinks you overreacted, that you're being stubborn and difficult. But that's her problem, not yours. I've started standing up to her more, setting boundaries, making it clear that my relationship with you is important to me. It's caused some tension in our marriage, but maybe that tension needed to happen. Maybe we needed this wake-up call." I was impressed. The David sitting in front of me was different from the one I'd left 6 weeks ago. This David had a backbone. "I'm not asking you to come back," David said. "I can see you've built something good here. But I'm asking if you'll let me visit sometimes. If you'll let the kids visit. If we can start over, slowly, building the kind of relationship we should have had all along." I looked at my son, really looked at him. I saw genuine remorse in his eyes. I saw a man who had finally realized what he'd lost and was willing to work to get it back. "Yes," I said. But it has to be on my terms. You visit me here. You call before you come. You treat me with respect. And if I say no to something, you accept it without guilt trips or manipulation. Deal, David said immediately. Anything you need. We shook hands, and it felt like sealing a new contract between us. Not father and child, but two grown men who respected each other. We spent the rest of the day together. I showed him around Myrtle Beach, introduced him to Jerry, took him to my favorite restaurant on the pier. We talked about Margaret, about my life here, about his work and the kids. It was the best conversation we'd had in years, maybe ever, because for the first time, we were talking as equals. Before he left that evening, David hugged me. It wasn't the obligatory hug from before, the quick squeeze that didn't mean anything. It was a real hug, the kind that says I love you and I'm sorry and I won't take you for granted again, all at once. Thank you for not giving up on me completely, he said. Thank you for teaching me this lesson, even though I didn't want to learn it. I hugged him back. That's what fathers do, son. We teach, even when it's hard, even when it hurts. The months that followed were a revelation. David kept his word. He visited once a month, always calling ahead, always respectful of my time and my space. He brought Emma and Tyler a few times, and those visits were different too. The kids didn't come expecting to be entertained or taken care of. They came wanting to spend time with me. We'd walk on the beach, build sandcastles, talk about their lives. Emma told me about a boy she liked at school. Tyler showed me his science project. These were the grandparent moments I'd been missing, the ones that felt real and meaningful. Jerry watched this transformation with approval. You did it, Harold, he said one evening as we sat on my balcony. You set a boundary, you stuck to it, and you forced them to change. Most people don't have the guts to do what you did. I thought about that. Had it taken guts, or had it just taken reaching the end of my rope? I didn't do it to force them to change, I said. I did it to save myself. The fact that it changed them too, that's just a bonus. Vanessa never came to visit. David told me she still thought I'd overreacted, that I was being difficult, that families should just forgive and forget. But I noticed that David stopped letting her dictate his relationship with me. He made his own decisions about when to call, when to visit, what to share. He'd learned that he could love his wife and still have boundaries with her. That was his journey to make, and I was glad he was making it. 8 months after I left that guest house, I got a text from Emma. It said, Grandpa, I miss you. Can I come visit by myself this summer? Dad says I can fly down if you say yes. I want to learn to fish like you and Mr. Jerry do. I stared at that text for a long time, feeling emotions I couldn't quite name. My granddaughter wanted to spend time with me, not because she needed something, not because her parents made her, but because she wanted to. I texted back, yes, I would love that. Emma spent 2 weeks with me that July. It was one of the best experiences of my life. We fished off the pier every morning. Jerry taught her to tie knots and bait hooks. We walked on the beach collecting shells. We made dinner together in my small kitchen, and she told me about her dreams for the future. She wanted to be a marine biologist, she said, and study dolphins. I told her about Margaret, about our marriage, about the things I'd learned in 72 years of living. And she listened, really listened, like what I had to say mattered. On her last night, as we sat on the balcony watching the sunset, Emma said something that made my heart swell. Grandpa, I'm glad you moved here. I know Mom says you ran away, but Dad told me the truth, that we didn't treat you right and you had to show us how to be better. I get it now, and I'm sorry I didn't notice before. I hugged her. You were a kid, sweetheart. It wasn't your job to notice, but I'm proud of you for understanding now. The following Christmas, something unexpected happened. David called and asked if I'd be willing to host Christmas at my condo. Just the 5 of us, he said. You, me, Emma, Tyler, and Vanessa. I know it's a lot to ask, especially having Vanessa there, but the kids really want to spend Christmas with you. And I think Vanessa needs to see your life here, to understand that you're not just being stubborn. You've built something real and good. I thought about it for a long time. Having Vanessa in my space, in the life I'd built for myself, felt risky. But I also knew that avoiding her forever wasn't the answer. Okay, I said, but ground rules. Vanessa treats me with respect in my home. No passive-aggressive comments, no guilt trips, no expectations that I'll cook and clean for everyone. We're all adults. We all contribute equally. David agreed immediately. I'll make sure she understands. Christmas Day came, and I was nervous. I'd cooked a small turkey. Jerry had offered to help, and we'd made it together. The condo was decorated simply but beautifully. When my family arrived, I greeted them at the door with my heart pounding. Vanessa looked uncomfortable. She stood in my doorway, holding a pie she'd made, and for the first time since I'd known her, she looked uncertain. "Harold," she said stiffly, "thank you for inviting us. Your home is lovely." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even close to what I deserved, but it was something. "Come in," I said. We had a good day. Not perfect. There were awkward moments, times when Vanessa's old patterns started to show through and David had to gently redirect her. But we ate together, played games with the kids, walked on the beach. Emma showed her mother the spot where we'd found the best shells. Tyler told his parents about the fish he'd caught with me over the summer. At the end of the night, as they were preparing to leave, Vanessa pulled me aside. "I owe you an apology," she said, the words clearly difficult for her. "I didn't see what we were doing to you. Or maybe I did see it and I didn't care because it was convenient. Either way, it was wrong. David's told me how happy you are here, and I can see it's true. I'm sorry for my part in driving you away. It wasn't the most gracious apology I'd ever received, but I could tell it was genuine." She was trying. "Thank you," I said. "I appreciate you saying that. Life isn't a fairy tale." Vanessa and I didn't become best friends. David and I still had moments of tension when old patterns tried to resurface, but the fundamental dynamic had changed. I was no longer the person who existed to serve everyone else's needs. I was Harold Mitchell, a 72-year-old man with his own life, his own home, his own happiness. I was a father and grandfather who was loved, not used, and that made all the difference. A year after I'd walked out of that guest house with my suitcase, I was sitting on my balcony with Jerry, watching the sunset. "Do you regret it?" he asked. "Leaving the way you did? Taking all their stuff? Basically disappearing on them?" I thought about the question seriously. Did I regret the method? The drama? The pain I'd caused? "No," I said finally, because nothing else would have worked. I'd tried talking, I'd tried hinting, I'd tried being patient. The only thing that got their attention was me stopping, me leaving, me showing them what life looked like without me in it. "That text from the airport," I continued. That "watch the house, remember to clean every day" text. That was the moment I realized I'd become invisible to them. Not as a person, just as a function, and I refused to be that anymore. So no, I don't regret it. I regret that it took me so long to do it. Jerry raised his beer in a toast. To standing up for yourself even when it's terrifying, even when it means losing everything to find yourself again. We clinked bottles, and I looked out at the ocean, at the endless waves, at the life I'd built from the rubble of my old one. Margaret's photo sat on my side table, and I swear I could hear her voice in my head. "I'm proud of you," she seemed to say. "You found your way back to yourself. You remembered that you matter." I thought about all the people out there who might be in similar situations, being taken for granted by family, being used by people they love, slowly disappearing into a role that erases who they really are. If my story could help even one person find the courage to say no more, then all of it would be worth it. That's my story. What do you think? Would you have done the same? Would you have had the courage to walk away from family who treated you like hired help? Or would you have stayed, hoping things would change on their own? Leave me a comment. I want to hear what you think. And if this story resonated with you, give it a like and subscribe to my channel. I have many more stories like this to share. Stories about finding yourself after you've been lost, about standing up when everyone expects you to stay down, about choosing your own happiness even when it disappoints other people. Thank you for listening. And remember, you matter. Your feelings matter. Your needs matter. Don't ever let anyone convince you otherwise.